The additional language would read then, we'll start out. The Board of Education of Public Schools hereby reaffirms its commitment to ensuring the long-term stability of the Omaha School Employees Retirement System. We generally support the efforts of the Nebraska Legislature to harmonize OSERS with the Nebraska School Employees Retirement System. The new language would start. We applaud the completion of the work plan, recommendations, cost estimates, and cost comparisons regarding the transfer of management of OSERS to the Public Employees Retirement Board as required by LB 31. We encourage the introduction and passage of legislation which would transfer the management of OSERS to the Public Employees Retirement Board as contemplated in LB 31 reports. And the rest of the position statement would remain the same. It's the Better Together findings that we concluded from December and January of this year. So the Legislative Committee recommends that the board approve this addition to the matrix position statement. Questions?
Blair, can you go over with the board of everyone that was in the Better Together Coalition if the organization has taken a position on this statement already and what their position is?
Who have already taken a position
Correct.
on the report?
Yes.
I believe that the OSERS Board of Trustees, who's OSERS of course is a member of the Better Together Coalition, they had a meeting last Thursday and voted 4-3 to oppose the findings of the report going into the hearing next week. And I'm not sure of any other of the, I know of the other members, there's OEA, there's OEA Retired, there's SEIU Local 226, and NSEA is also part of the Better Together Coalition. I may be missing one.
Okay.
Yeah.
I believe SEIU voted to be neutral on this. Or did they take a vote on this yet?
I'm not certain
sure.
if they've
Okay.
taken a vote officially.
Appreciate it. I just want everyone to know who's taken a position before we actually take a position on it. Mrs. Godding.
So this legislation is really the second component to getting the investments transferred down to Lincoln. This is the piece to get the actual operations transferred, not the liability, which sits with the taxpayers of Omaha Public Schools, but at least the operations side. And today, if you think about it, Omaha Public Schools, not the OSERS office, does the vast majority of the work, the cutting of the checks and the transferring of the cash and making sure that the retirees end up getting paid the money they need to. So I just want to reemphasize the importance of this work in getting it aligned with what is in Lincoln already. I know it will be expensive. I think it's a little over $4 million, but if you think about and know and understand what it takes to do a systems integration, you know that it's costly. And the one thing we want to make sure of is that our retirees and our current teachers are getting paid the amount when they're in retirement that they appropriately deserve, and not too little or not too much, but that it's done well. And because our calculations for COLA and other things are different than what's in Lincoln, that's why this isn't just a seamless dump of data and then go. So I know it's expensive, but I think that that's important. I also know that many of the things I've heard before are, oh, we would like an office here. Whether or not that happens, I think we've all learned in COVID how to deal with more remote meetings, and I think that that's important to note. I also think that it's really important to note that, well, I think that the current executive director understands those parameters of what information should be given to retirees. This is not a consultation service of what to do with your retirement money. That's something retirees need to employ their own investment advisor to tell them what to do, nor should we be giving advice about who they should go to. So sometimes I think there's this perception that we're more than we are, or more than we should be from a fiduciary standpoint. So I don't want that to cloud anyone's opinion either of moving forward.
Thank you. Mr. Perlman.
do we know OEA and OEA retired's position on this?
I'm not certain if they've met to take a vote yet on it, but I believe that they're considering it. All the Better Together Coalition groups were asked to take this back to their membership and to try and come to a conclusion of how they'd like to proceed at the actual hearing next week. And Senator Mark Coulterman has actually been reaching out to all these groups, and if they have been having meetings, he has been meeting with them along with Ms. Linda Richards to further educate people on the groups and associations on what the report says and of the findings.
Okay. And so what, I guess I'm trying to wrap my head around exactly what is contemplated to be transferred. I was able to go over, I mean, there's some thick reading, but I went over the report, the interim study on LB 31. I got to say, it looks like there's some other things like the COLA and some other things that would be transferred and be under the purview of the PERB. Is that correct or not?
Not exactly. So the report itself outlines all the different aspects of OSERS and all the different aspects of MPERS, because eventually we need to find ways to either, roll into a separate siloed OSERS plan without necessarily changing the benefits, and that's not what this bill might do, or the findings of the report say. That there's no changing of the COLA benefits, but it does explain the minute differences in each of the plans, which there are many. So within the report itself, there's a table with two sides going through pages and pages of the different definitions and that differ between both plans statutorily. So this report does not propose to make any of those type of changes to OSERS.
No, that's not what I'm asking. I know the report doesn't make those changes, and I don't believe that even the transfer of management from OSERS to MPERS would cause that change in and of itself. What I'm asking is, would it give the PERB or NPERS the ability to modify those things?
No. We would have to make there would have to be other legislative changes to statute that would make that. They would not have that authority through the management. We would have to structurally change the plan through legislation.
Okay. And I guess I don't know how to phrase this. I've always felt like OPS wants this change. Can you kind of explain, like, in brief, like, why OPS would be in favor of that?
I think from what I can tell, this is just my opinion. I don't want to speak direct for the district because that's you guys. But over the last few years, ever since we tried to get the pension obligation bonds passed, the only thing that OPS has the power really to do is continue to make the actually required contributions and ARC payments. And we all know that that's not a really great long-term solution to getting the plan healthy and really cutting down that unfunded liability. So, we've had these discussions. The Better Together Coalition was convened by Dr. Logan in 2018 to start having discussions as to how can we get to a healthier place sooner rather than later, because we know that that's best for all the OSERS retirees, all the Omaha Public School employees that are in this plan. So these are discussions, we're happy that the legislature and Senator Coulterman are willing to have much more in-depth discussions. I know you all were ready, and the Better Together Coalition was ready to do this in 2019, or at the end of 2019 in this past session, and basically we were told it wasn't your time. So, people are saying that they're ready to take the next steps with us, and I think that OPS should want to move forward.
And how does a transfer from OSERS to MPERS get the pension in a more favorable position to become more fully funded?
in the immediacy, it actually does cut down on the administrative costs to the district and to the plan. That in itself is, we're spending less money to get the better bang for our buck.
Because if I'm correct, Mr. Perlman, I do believe we pay for the OSER's office. So when you think of that, you wouldn't need an executive director, and you wouldn't need a board. And since the initial intent of the board was to make investment decisions, since that's now with the investment council, there's really no need to have an OSER's board. It's like a duplication, unless an employee was going to retire. But just like Mrs. Godding said, a lot of this stuff is done through OPS already. And I think some of the holdup with OEA retired and OEA is having to make that drive to Lincoln. But we have heard, if you live in Scotts Bluffs, you still gotta. So I think that is something that isn't a line in the sand that I think Senator Coltman and others are willing to work on. But Mrs. Godding, go ahead.
So I do think that one of the big discussions that we had initially was because of the cost and picking up that efficiency by not having the office. OPS doesn't pay for it, but OSERS. So out of the retirement funds today, the office is paid for, and those costs could be absorbed easily within the PERB and not be duplicated, which in a sense, if you thought about that today, they would be duplicated if they weren't all under one umbrella. And so I think that's a big part of it. And then I think that maybe from a OPS retiree standpoint, there became at one point in time a little more reliance on consultation with the retirement office than what the fiduciary responsibility really is. So I think I would add those things.
Thank you. Mrs. Nilles-Brash?
If I might add a few more things as part of the discussion, because I do think, management is much broader than just retirement consultation. And so just understanding that the management, the OSERS board sets that rate of return, which is a topic of discussion that has a direct impact upon that arc. And so having MPERS set that rate of return and tying yourself to the state. The state has a budget that they have to obviously make every year. And so it certainly, links the two plans together. And there are other management type decisions like that rate of return that are rested with the management of the plan or with the OSERS trustees board. And so it is much broader than just retirement consultations, so that it provides an additional reason why that transfer of management and that linking of the plans to MPERS helps align us with the state. Thank you.
Thank you.
And part of that is the actuary, the accountants who do the work, that return rate, and lining that return rate to what you previously had asked. The Nebraska Investment Council does a study, and I think they were showing through their folks at maybe Aon something like 6 or 6.5% return. So they're also providing that to the PERB. If the PERB was making those decisions, I think what Megan is saying is that would align us more closely to what the Nebraska Teachers Association is also seeing.
Correct. Because I think there was a time we hired our own actuary as a district, and OSERS had their own, but the retirement committee only wanted to hear from the OSERS, so there was some conflicting information. Do you have anything else, Mr. Perlman?
Yes. So when we talk about harmonizing OSERS with MPERS, is it accurate to say that there are just a whole laundry list of things that are different between OSERS and MPERS, that when we talk about harmonized, what we really saying is change from OSERS conditions to MPERS conditions, like the medical COLA, the different retirement ages, the differences in disability retirement benefits, the differences in death benefits, those are all different between MPERS and OSERS.
So originally, yes, they were all different. And there are multiple tiers within the system, correct? And so the original tier, tier 1, Mr. Ray, for example, is in tier 1. And he has different requirements, different benefits than, say, tier 2, which I am in. And so tier 2 has different requirements and different benefits. By the time you get to tier 4, which is where we are now, the benefits between MPERS and the benefits between OSERS are nearly identical, other than the 25-hour requirement and the 30-hour requirement that we have. So they are currently primarily identical.
Okay, well, on page 13 of this report, it just does not make that distinction. It's highlighted in big bold letters, notable differences in plan design and other notable provisions.
Yes, originally, and so you have to
Okay.
pay those benefits out. So what it's referring to is that payment that they're going to have to set up a computer system to provide a different payment system than they're currently doing with MPERS, because the original tier 1 was different than the tier 1 now. It's not anything other than making sure that they accurately provide those benefits to people.
Okay.
So OSERS will still be operated just differently under the PER board. So it'll be two different systems that'll be operated by the PER board, correct? Yeah, it's not merging them. They'll be operated
Not
completely
merged.
different. And if I'm correct,
Siloed.
I believe there's another board that, I think the sheriffs or whoever, somebody else that is
State
operated
patrol.
completely different. Two different pension programs there, so. Anything else?
Have
Mrs.
we
Gotti.
answered all your questions, Mr. Perlman?
No.
I can see that, so
No.
that's what I'm trying
I
to.
mean, just for
get to.
illustrative purposes,
Mhm.
I mean, I hate to, I'm in NPERS because I'm a county employee. And I know that throughout the years, the benefits have gotten worse, not better. And that's a real concern of mine. And so I'm trying to wrap my mind around, will MPERS, and I know they can't unilaterally do it, but could there, I mean, cut down the brass tacks, could there be a reduction in benefits in the future to teachers? And, when we talk about why districts may want to change retirement things, it's usually not so that they can spend more money, it's so they could save more money. And so, I mean, this is all conjecture, because we're talking about, this report alone is 41 pages. We're only talking about a study here. I feel like, again, I hate to speak brutally honest, but I don't feel like we could even have our minds wrapped around exactly what we're getting ourselves into here. And to be perfectly honest, that's been kind of an issue with this board and OSERS over the past 10 years, and so I'm not going to be a part of that. So no, I don't think my questions can be answered. And so, again, as someone who's in MPERS, who is in a cash balance, and if I would have started working where I worked 5 years earlier, I would have been on a better retirement plan. I just have valid concerns.
Fair enough. Mrs. Gotti?
So if we think about the Mr. Ray and the Ms. Neelis Brush example, Mr. Ray is going to always be in tier 1, and he's always going to have those benefits because that's what he received when he signed his employment with us. And Mrs. Neelis Brush will get her benefits in tier 2, and Dr. Logan will have hers in tier 4, right? And so Dr. Logan could say, wow, well, how come Matt gets better benefits? Well, he was here at a different time, and that was the benefit structure at the time. So I guess I would not believe that changes. What we do is we always add tiers, and so that's part of what's happened is we've had to add tiers as we've recognized some of the issues around the retirement system. And there may be a tier 5 or a tier 6 as we go forward. Is that a fair way to explain that?
And tiers are the purview of the legislature, right? the benefits that you come into are called contract rights. So you have a contract with the benefits that are in the statute at the time that you come into that.
Oh, I
There
have
are
no
some-
concern of changes to existing contractual obligations. My concern is moving forward, what
And-
changes would be done.
And that is the purview of the legislature. They occasionally bring, as they have recently, they occasionally bring statutes. That doesn't mean that those same statutory changes would happen any differently if you left OSERS separate from MPERS. What they have tried to do is harmonize the plan. The whole point in that was that they're making identical changes to MPERS that they're making to OSERS. And so having the management merged, which is still a separate plan, would not have any distinction in any of the tiers. That's not what we're talking about here. We're not combining the plans together. We're not combining the benefits together. They still retain a level of separation. But if that comes up as something for the legislature to consider, it is very likely, because that's what they have been doing, that they would do the same thing for OSERS that they would also do for MPERS.
So we're really just talking about the elimination of a management office in Omaha? Is that's it?
Correct.
And it would save how much a year?
The current projections are between 100 and 150,000 per year.
There's an employee in that office. I mean, if you think about that, you're saving that one full-time employee.
Oh, no, I get that, and saving 150,000, I mean, how much is the big pie? I mean, how much? 150,000 out of what? I mean, how much is paid out every year by OSERS in retirement benefits?
I know that it's around 800 million for the unfunded liability currently, 824, somewhere in that range. It's in the current actuarial report. Yeah.
But that's not what he's asking. It was 66 short this year, which is what I just said. So I know it's on the treasurer's report. I haven't pulled it back up. I can't remember. Are you talking about unfunded liability? You're talking about how much it gets paid out every year, right?
Correct, not the unfunded
Correct.
liability.
And that's on the financial statements, which we could get back to. But I think I know it says 100 to 150,000, but it's more than just one employee. It's the cost that gets charged by the district to cutting those checks and doing the operations, because we have some other charges that we do.
It's also potentially legal fees. It's also
Right.
potentially a lobbyist. It is a number of items that could not, be charged to the plan, and therefore, helps reduce that ultimate arc that
Actuary
we owe.
study, all that stuff.
All of it, yeah.
Right,
correct.
if you look at the budget, it's more than just, I think that estimate is a little low, personally, from what I've had experience on for the last 5 or 6
They
years.
still go and
Well-
travel.
Oh, sorry. I guess my only remaining question would be is, you've mentioned that there's tiers 1 through 4, and once you get to tier 4, sounds like that's the newest employees,
Correct.
that the differences aren't very big.
They're minimal, yes, correct.
I'd like to see those before I take a position on this. Is that something that I could see?
I can get it to you, I can go get it to you now. I mean, I can go find the statute and show you the difference. The primary one is the level that a part-time person qualifies for. For MPERS, it's 25 hours, and the other one is 30. So that is the primary difference that I recall. And I have, I think we've given it to the board previously. I know some of those things have changed. I feel like we gave it to you in tier 3, when tier 3 before tier 4 came. But I could go find the other one. But that's the primary difference.
Okay. Yeah, I
in
think
it.
they're listed on page 13 of the report here.
Yep.
So,
And the reason why this is in front of us today is to take action because there is something coming up.
Yes, next Friday if you want to.
There is a hearing on LR 318, which is truly just an interim study to go over the findings of the LB 31 study and the report that we have before you. And we have been asked to take a position on the findings before going into the hearing next Friday on the 18th before the
Correct.
Retirements Committee and the legislature.
And I believe Dr. Logan will be testifying, correct?
Correct. That is the
Perfect.
plan.
If we don't take a position on this, then she can't really say that we're for it. It'd be like a neutral for it position.
We like to take positions on
Correct.
things before we testify.
And the legislature convenes in January, and this is going to be a 2-year process, is that right?
Yep.
Okay.
We'll do it all.
It has to be introduced in the first year of the
Yep.
biennium.
Mrs. Gutting.
I think it's about 135 million in payments out, prorated based on what was on the financial statements on tonight's agenda.
Okay.
Does that
So-
make sense?
135 million and 135,000 in savings. I'm terrible at math, but I mean, that's,
Yeah, I think that, I think we'll see more savings than that. I'm not sure
okay.
what that number is, and I haven't gone back and looked at the budget for OSERS. You could pull that down.
And what do the
Let's see.
retirees of OPS lose in not having that? They lose nothing.
Nothing,
Well, they lose the office in Omaha.
right, but,
That's it?
right.
Okay, all right.
At the hearing next week, there will be a presentation by, from individuals from NPERS as well as Linnea Solutions, who put together this study, conducted it for us. So we'll hear more on how they came to those cost estimates at the hearing.
Any other questions?
No.
One other thing, just to be, because I like to be, even if it's maybe not counterintuitive for me to share this, I think some of their concern too was the voice. So, yeah, I like to be, some of the concern from the retirees was voice on, in terms of that was a concern for them. So, Walter Sue would be very proud of me for making sure that I say that. But, I mean, you know, it was something that, I don't want to sit here and not pretend I don't know that information, but that was something that was a concern. One of the things that was potentially would be an ask, obviously, was to have a seat on the NPERS board to make sure that there is voice for the members of OSERS on the NPERS board to take care of that, that concern. And that's one remedy that has come up to make sure, and I would say that it seemed that we didn't, from the conversations that I've had with Senator Coltman and others, it did seem like that was a doable, that was a reasonable ask moving forward. Maybe not the office so much, but but to make sure that there was a voice to have a seat on NPERS. And I know they've done that with some of the other retirement plans that are represented by NPERS as well.
Yeah, don't take my asking questions for being opposed to it. I just, I
didn't
mean,
take-
These are good
And
questions.
I didn't take it that way, but I just like to, you know, honesty is real important to me, so I
No.
want to make sure that I represented that I was one of the people on the trustee board that voted in favor, so.
right, this is a big change. I want to make sure I understand it, so that's all.
All righty. Well, this is an action item, this proposed statement. So entertain a motion to approve the proposed position statement. That
So moved.
reaffirms, go ahead, there's a motion by Mr. Smith. Is there a second?
Second,
Second by Mrs. Godding. Any other discussion? All right, hearing none. Mr. Ray, roll call, please. Thank you so much, Blair. I appreciate it. We appreciate it.
Cassidy,
Aye.
Godding,
aye.
Allman,
Aye.
Cracky,
Aye.
Pearlman.
I'm gonna go ahead and abstain because I don't have the information I need to make a decision yet.
Ryan,
Aye.
Smith,
Aye.
Snow.
Aye.
8 ayes.
Motion carries. 7 aye, right? 7 aye. Motion carries. Thank you. Moving on to item I1H, this is the first reading of Policy 3000, Business Operations. This was brought to the board information on August 17th. This is the first reading. I will open it up to any board members that might have questions,
These are for the
concerns,
3,000s.
comments. I would entertain a motion to approve the first reading of the 3000 series.
So moved.
There's a motion by Ms. Ryan,
Second.
second by Mr. Smith. All right, any discussion?
I have a quick question. Were there changes to the sustainability policy from the last reading?
So this is the first reading, it was information before?
Right.
Changes did you make, did you send in changes? I'm sorry.
I didn't receive any changes.
No, I know Ms. Snipe was, had some feelers out to try to get some input, so I was just making sure.
I don't,
I haven't received any changes. The one change we made was the bolding of the red, I think, that you pointed out at the last meeting.
all right. Mr. Ray, roll call, please.
Gadding,
Aye.
Holman,
Aye.
Cracky, Pearlman,
Aye.
Mrs. Cracky, I'm sorry.
I said aye.
Okay, thank you. Ryan,
Aye.
Smith,
Aye.
Snow,
Aye.
Cassidy.
Aye.
8
Motion carries. We're going to move on to item I1J. This is claims and grants. Awards, I believe this item was pulled by Mrs. Gotti, and the floor is yours.
I did. I pulled it just for the simple reason that we did pay Baxter $25,000 for graduations. And so I just want to encourage the board next year, as you're going through the process of whether or not we're in COVID or not, to really, even though $25,000 is not a lot to the overall budgets that got approved tonight, it's still a bunch of money that, and unfortunately, we never got to have graduations. And so I think for a lot of kids, that's a tough thing, but then to know that I'm sure there was a contract and all that, but maybe to think about that for next year, because we don't really know where we're going to be through next June, right?
Approved clause.
At this point. So I know it's something that a lot of kids missed, so anyway.
Thank you. I'm entertain a motion to approve the items I1J, claims as well as new grant awards.
So moved.
There's a motion by Ms. Ryan. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Smith. Any other discussion? Mr. Ray, roll call, please.
Holman,
Aye.
Cracky,
Aye.
Pearlman,
Aye.
Ryan,
Aye.
Smith,
Aye.
Snow,
Aye.
Cassidy,
Aye.
Gotti.
Aye.
8
Motion carries. We have for receipt reports a CBOC update for Phase 1 and Phase 2 bond programs for August 2020. We're going to make a motion to go into closed session, but the board is going to stay in the room and everyone else is going to have to leave the room. And we're going to eat cookies and have closed session. I don't think we get cookies anymore.
No cookies.
I know.
We don't
COVID's
have
changed
anything.
everything. Dr. Holman.
Not even coffee.
I move that the Board of Education go into closed session for the protection of the public interest and for the prevention of needless injury to the reputation of individuals, to discuss with the superintendent, secretary to the board, and legal counsel, pending litigation, real estate, and legal advice.
There's a motion to go into closed session by Dr. Holman. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Smith. Roll call, please.
Cracky,
Aye.
Pearlman,
Aye.
Ryan,
Aye.
Smith,
Aye.
Snow,
Aye.
Cassidy,
Aye.
Gotti. Holman,
Aye.
Motion carries. Let me remind the board that the purpose for closed session is for the protection of the public interest and for the prevention of needless injury to the reputation of individuals, to discuss with the superintendent, Secretary to the Board, and Legal Counsel. Pending litigation, real estate, and legal advice. Let the record reflect the Board went into closed session at 9:52. Thank you. We are live. All right, the board has come out of closed session at 10:46. Meeting's adjourned at 10:46. Good night.